Hello, my name is Elena Breitbach, and these are my group members Micah Francis, Elise Boris, and Connor Mayers. Today we will be presenting on gaps in transgender rights. Our research question was, are transgender individuals receiving the same liberties as cisgender people in society? In modern-day America, transgender rights tend to be at the forefront of political discussions. There's been a lot of hostility towards the transgender community due to the rise of bathroom bills in America, the cisgender expectation of society, and the general lack of understanding of gender dysphoria. This has caused rifts between the LGBTQ community and the heteronormative, cisnormative population.
Some may argue that there is sufficient understanding. For example, in an interview with Emma Schmidt, a transgender teacher, she stated, "I'm the luckiest woman alive. The administration have been wonderful. From day one, they have been supportive, and the students have been wonderful." While this may be true for her, it is a rarity. The transgender community still faces many instances of discrimination. Our presentation debunks this concept and expands upon the many ways in which transgender people still experience discrimination. I examine the issue of transgender liberties through the historical and political lens. By looking through this lens, I was able to conclude that throughout history and until today's political climate, transgender people have been and continue to be severely discriminated against. First, in the historical part of my lens, I was able to find a clear pattern of historical discrimination against transgender individuals, specifically in the workplace. In the book Transgender History, transgender author Susan Stryker discusses how she and many others were marginally employed for a very long time. The difficulty finding employment is just one of the many ways transgender individuals have been discriminated against in the past. In the political part of my lens, I found that both current laws and the attitudes of politicians show the blatant discrimination transgender individuals face. There have been a large number of restrictive bathroom bills passed throughout the country, which seriously limit the liberties that transgender people had in using public restrooms. Additionally, the U.S. has many transphobic politicians. Nothing shows this better than the actions of Virginia House of Delegates Republicans when a transgender woman, Danica Roem, was elected into their body. To avoid referring to her as a woman, they changed an age-old rule which required delegates to be referred to by a gender-specific pronoun. Instead, now, delegates are referred to with a gender-neutral pronoun. This move was made specifically against Rome and highlights the transphobia among politicians and the broader pattern of discrimination against transgender individuals. Now on to Micah with the psychology and statistics lens.
My thesis is that transgender people are being discriminated against due to their gender expression, which is negatively impacting their psychological health. Oftentimes, one of the most pervasive arguments against allowing transgender people to use the bathroom of their orientation is that they are sexual predators. Irish author Gemma Tosh reveals the origins of this myth in her book, Psychology and Gender Dysphoria, Feminist and Transgender Perspectives. She asserts that feminist Janice Raymond is immediately responsible for creating and maintaining this implicit association between predators and transgender people. Tosh states, quote, "These polemical accusations have promoted two of the most enduring and harmful narratives regarding trans people, that they were deceivers and sexual predators. This falsehood has endured throughout time and continues to be used to refuse rights to transgender people. These dangerous assertions not only negatively affect the transgender community, but they heighten transgender people's senses of gender dysphoria and leave them ostracized from society. Transgender people are also denied the right to present gender-appropriate identities safely. In a national survey held by the National Center for Transgender Equality, findings showed that 40% of those who presented ID that did not match their gender expression reported being harassed, 3% reported being attacked or assaulted, and 15% reported being asked to leave. What this means is that transgender people are not receiving the same services as cisgender people because the way they present themselves does not match what is on their ID card, a card which they are often legally barred from changing. These situations often lead to feelings of hopelessness and defeat for transgender people. In the worst cases, these isolative events combined with other psychological factors such as gender dysphoria and fast stress responses nurture suicidality and strengthen the divide between the normalized cisgender society and transgender realities. Now, on to Elena with the sociological perspective.
I looked at the issue of transgender inequality through a social lens. Much of the usage of media in today's society is linked to coping with the transphobic representation. The effects of the negative outlook and the use of media resources in the transgender community proves that an inequality in everyday liberties exists. Transgender characters in television shows and movies are often portrayed as the butt of jokes or as traps for cisgender heterosexual people. Transgender women especially have received harsh representation. As stated by Channing Wellborn in her published master's thesis, They are portrayed as if they should be feared and as if they are not really women. They are seen as being abhorrent and as evoking visceral, sickening reactions in men. Negative outlooks such as these are what are displayed through the media and force the transgender community to turn to social media to express their feelings, share their stories, and seek support and acceptance. When current President Donald Trump revoked the law protecting transgender students from using the bathroom of their corresponding identity, the transgender community fired back. Both transgender people and supporters of the community took to social media to express their resentments. Other people choose to adopt social media as a way to share their stories in an effort to help people in the same situations as them. For transgender man Jamie Wilson, sharing his transition story online proved to be both therapeutic and beneficial for others. Stories like Wilson's tend to affect other people seeking acceptance and support. Another source of online support is found through celebrity role models. The television show I Am Jazz features a transgender girl named Jazz Jennings who provides people in the LGBTQ community with a role model. The need for resources like this proves that a negative representation of the transgender community exists and therefore presents unfair obstacles for them. It has been detrimental to their well-being, and because of this, they have had to turn to social media for help. Now on to Elise with an ethical perspective.
I looked at the issue of transgender inequality through an ethical lens. Due to the unrealistic implications of their gender identity, transgender students are treated unethically in school environments. Transgender youth face many obstacles during their schooling careers. One of these obstacles being microaggressions such as name-calling, harassment, and even violence. These mistreatments have shown to have harmful effects on the mental states of victims. In fact, in a New Zealand study by researcher Terry Ann C. Clark, it was found that 17.6% of trans students who were bullied weekly, 41.3% showed depressive symptoms, along with the 19.8% who have attempted suicide in the past year. To avoid these aggressions, transgender youth face immense pressures to conform to the norms of their peers. When they do not conform, the brutal mistreatment and harassment begins. It is considerably unethical to enforce a gender role which does not correspond to the child's identity, as this pressure often results in anxiety and depression. Another issue in school systems is the fight against allowing transgender students to use the bathroom of their identity. Allowing students to use their preferred bathroom lets the students feel more comfortable and safe in school environments. This adjustment in school systems makes the students feel more accepted in their school life and public life. Our solution to the common mistreatment of transgender individuals is to properly educate the public about the transgender community. The first step may be a more positive representation of transgender people in the media. This would spread positive information about the transgender community to the general public. Pushing for gender-neutral bathrooms would also allow transgender people to feel more safe and comfortable in environments they may not have before. The fight for these bathrooms could be achieved through protests and social activism, which would also shed light on the transgender community.
While we do provide several solutions to the mistreatment in the transgender community, we realize there may be a few gaps in our solution. One issue may be that teachers and the public will be unsupportive and non-responsive to education about the transgender community. However, this may be avoided through proper monitoring of faculty in schools to eliminate any transphobic teachings. This task could be handled by school administration. Another issue is that the current government is generally anti-LGBTQ, which could hinder the positive media representation and legal change for transgender people. A fix for this could be activism and public displays of discontent. A final issue, and a rather common one, is the misuse of pronouns, which can cause transgender people to feel upset or rejected for who they are. However, this is an issue that is natural and will fade with time. The implications of our solution are that transgender people could finally receive the equal treatment that they deserve, and they could finally live without fear for their personal safety. Suicide and depression rates would drop, and society would have a generally healthier outlook.
Elise, in what way did you improve your ability to work with a group as a result of this project?
Well, we learned that even if we do have good communication, we had a lot of scheduling conflicts, and that we really needed to plan everything out on certain days so that everyone could make it and we could practice and make our presentation the best it could be.
Connor, what is a way in which your team's resolution makes you think differently about your own individual research?
Well, one part of our solution and conclusion was that positive media content and activism, especially on social media, can be very beneficial. And I think that's, was something I didn't really think about when I was doing my research, but when I got towards, finding out a conclusion and really hammering that out, that was something that I kept in mind. So I feel like Elena's perspective there in the social lens was very helpful to me.
Micah, how did the group decide to include Elise's perspective or lens into the overall presentation?
Right, so originally we were a bit worried because Elise's perspective is similar but in a not quite the same world as mine. And so we figured if we put hers right after mine, it would cause a bit of a conflict, like it would sound like my argument might be continuing because they're close, they're not the same, but they're close. So we decided that we would put her after Elena because that way there would be a gap and a difference in between. And Elise's ethical perspective, of course, connecting with psychology is close, so I just decided that we would do it that way.
Elena, what is the strongest counter-argument to the solution or conclusion your team identified, and why?
So we had an interview with a teacher, a transgender teacher here at our school that provided information that she felt accepted and she felt well represented at this school. So using that argument in all of our papers, especially Elise's ethical perspective in schools and Micah's psychology perspective, it really was hard to kind of overcome that. And so like proving our point and our solution that to like promote activism and teaching in schools was hard to overcome.